Saturn is stationary today in the 19th degree of Aquarius. Now, we've studied this particular Sabian symbol before, quite recently, in the context of Saturn having entered the 19th degree, and did so at the time when it was square to Uranus. The square between Uranus and Saturn is moving away now, and Saturn's from today moving forward, and it will be going direct until June. It will take us into Pisces. So something that was slowly being assimilated, maybe blocked from our understanding as Saturn was going retrograde, now it's focused on the change point. It's turning around. This is a bit of a crisis point in the true sense of the word, critical, turning point, crisis. So there is in our lives the possibility of understanding something about what we need to do, what our responsibilities are, in order to have a correct standpoint, a strategy for dealing with where we are in human history. It's not often that people give their attention to study this, but it is one of the crucial aspects of being spiritually awake, to know where you are in space and time. And to know where you are in time is very useful to sort of look at the cycles and trends of history. And it's not really easy to do that unless you study astrology. Historians don't really recognize this, and they certainly don't study it, but astrologers do. And we find that there are certain cycles that we can know about. And what we're doing here is understanding the fundamental cycle of direct and retrograde motion. So planets don't just breeze through the zodiac, they go forward and back and forward and back. And this sets up a deep, even if it's unconscious, rhythm of life. So where we are right now is at the point where Saturn has finished its retrogradation process, and it's concentrating our attention on this particular Sabian degree, the forest fire quenched. And it suggests that we have something important to deal with. This is Mark Edmund Jones. A forest fire quenched, Aquarius 19. This is a symbol of regenerative relaxation after extraordinary effort, and of man's exceptional capacity for achievement through the whole giving of himself in an emergency. Here is the dynamic cooperation by which the individual gains a high peak of self-expenditure, and in the moment's intensification rehearses potentialities he would never discover otherwise. What can be misfortune to be suffered can as easily become a successful adventure in broad social responsibility. The key word is concern. When positive, the degree is a special skill in bringing personal interests to some larger point of effectiveness. It is through intensification of problems to the point of emergency and crisis that we optimize our own potential to be who we are at that level of Saturn, that social level. Saturn really represents the contract, the social contract we have with civilization, with other people, with the community. The community is required to take care of certain things that we can't take care of alone. But equally, we are required to do certain things that the community needs us to do. Now, on a normal, routine, peacetime level, this means just doing your work, being of service in some way to the community, and being responsible about that, staying within certain guidelines of behavior as Saturn. And yet, when it comes to an emergency, sometimes we're called up. And that's what's happening right now, isn't it? There's this call up happening in Russia. And there's an emergency to deal with. From their perspective, they are at war. And actually, it's not much talked about, but they're threatened. It might be that the one man has made a silly decision, but the country didn't make that decision. The one man did. And now the country is threatened because of that one man. Already, good folk in Russia are being prevented from having holidays abroad. Some of them are having their own assets destroyed or stolen. And 300,000 of them are being called up. And the same number are trying to run away from that. So there is an emergency going on. What are you going to do about that? Each of us will have to deal with this question. And Saturn's stationary is just giving us a chance to think about that and to study our response. It's really good to have in mind what you will do in the event of an emergency. Those people that didn't anticipate the call up in Russia, they didn't leave the country early enough. They might get called up. They might get stuck in this situation because they weren't able to anticipate it. And we have to understand that the world is no longer safe. And we have to anticipate the dangers that are coming to us and do something about that. A forest fire is coming. Your own version of it, whatever that means for you. But there is something coming that will seem to you like an emergency. Maybe not immediately, maybe more in some places than other places, but it is coming. And it's really good to prepare for that. Saturn's general approach is a certain reluctance or prohibition or disdain of things that it doesn't like. So in Aquarius, personal freedom, new things, and so on. Saturn is not going to be that excited about the future coming. It suffers future shock. But then it becomes aware, Saturn generally, that it has this self-discipline written deep into itself. So it must. Even if it doesn't like it, it must. And when we actually do something that we don't like doing, because we must, then actually Saturn awakens within us. And it doesn't go back to sleep. Many of us have taken training and gone through a process of vigorous self-improvement. That's a Saturn experience. And if you haven't, well, then you haven't fully matured. Those of us who've actually gone through this experience and overcome our fear of doing the right thing, and we've gone on with it and we've started to do the right thing, perhaps even to the point of obsession, until we reach that final maturity phase where we do it when it's necessary, only when it's necessary, but we'll do the right thing when it's necessary. That level of Saturn has to be reached now in this question of how to deal with emergencies, the forest fire. Let me read you Dane Rudhyar's take on this one. A forest fire is being subdued by the use of water, chemicals, and sheer muscular energy. The skill and courage necessary to bring under control the destructive potential of carelessness, of karmic visitations. Forest fires may be caused by human carelessness, by lightning, or by the byproducts of modern technology. Every individual, at least once in his lifetime, if not repeatedly, may perhaps have to face spectacular reactions to seemingly insignificant acts. These are to be considered means to test his strength, ingenuity, or emotional stability. Every faculty at his disposal must be made use of, emotional, mental, and physical. He needs faith in himself and in superior powers. So once again, we're being explained by Rudhyar and Jones that the opportunities to grow up and develop further potentiality, to have an adult ability, a responsible attitude, to have gravitas, capacity to put out forest fires when necessary. That capacity is developed by putting them out. We have to have emergencies to deal with so that we grow up. And growing up isn't such a bad thing. It's a lovely feeling to know that you can cope. Whatever comes your way, you know how to deal with it. How do you know how to deal with it? Because you always have. Everything that's ever come up in your life, however scary, however outside of your comfort zone and your knowledge batch, however difficult it was, you dealt with it. And that's why you know you can deal with the future. It has to do with faith. This is what Rudyard is saying. You won't have faith in your ability to cope in the future unless you cope with things as they come up now. So rather than being an escapist, somebody else will deal with it kind of person, you can be somebody who steps forward and volunteers and says, this needs doing, I'll help. At whatever level, cleaning your town up from litter, or putting out a forest fire, or whatever community service you volunteer for, it's to your advantage, to your serious and profound long-term advantage, even beyond the grave. This is karma. This is how we deal with the worst of karma, by looking at our fears, standing up and dealing with it one way or another. That's what Saturn is doing now, and its lesson is being underlined very strongly during this week or so. It's stationary just for a week, and then it'll start moving forward and goes through to the next degree within a few weeks from there. So we have a test in front of us. So rise up, become stronger, deal with it, develop that gravitas.